Good morning, guys. Welcome back to Ansarkari. So let's start with the Sunday's edition of the Hindu newspaper for 27th of November. So firstly, we see that steps are being taken to revive one of the ancient practices which was practiced in peninsular India, and it was about maintaining a healthy plantation in and around the areas of temples. So a campaign has been started to revive that particular practice to maintain and protect the fragile ecosystems and recreate them on the temple lands. Now, every temple has a sthala vriksham, that is a sacred plant, and that denotes the importance given for plants and trees in the ancient days. So the groves, they have been shrinking in size due to anthropogenic activities and also because of climate change and poaching, land poaching. So now we are seeing the revival, and for PT, you must be aware about what is Worldwide Fund for Nature. Then next thing is about birth certificates. They are being mandatory if you want a job, your driving license, passport, and voting and the voting rights. So you can go through the provisions of the Registration of Birth and Death Act 1969, and this is being made mandatory, that is registration, your birth certificates and your death certificates also, and it is a punishable offense. So the government tends to improve the compliance to this thing. So that is one of the ways through which government is trying to increase the compliance. Okay, when we talk about the rights of prisoners in jail, so uh, however, it's a political incident, so we are just going to have a look at from the perspective of UPSC examination. So whatever is important for us, we are just dealing with that, and we are not getting into the politics of it. So it was found that the court found that prima facie, it believes that the fruits and vegetables that were being provided to the politician, they were being provided to him without any order of the DG of prisons or any other authority. And this is obviously leading to the violation of the fundamental rights of other prisoners, their Article 14, that is right to equality, and the state is bound to treat all the prisoners equally. So, a small piece of development. Then we see that farmers are again, they are gathering at the borders of Haryana and Punjab to revive their demands. Basically, they have three unmet demands, which is they want guaranteed MSP support price. So the MSP is not guaranteed by any law in India right now. Second is they want farm loan waivers. Thirdly is they want withdrawal of the Electricity Amendment Bill 2022. Then Sanjay Gandhi National Park is located in the state of Maharashtra. This can come in PT and match the followings, can be one of the options. And we had a discussion about the entry of private sector into the space sector in India. So the first rocket that was launched was named Vikram S, and it carried one Earth observation satellite, which is the EOS-06, and also 8 nano satellites. So it is one of the longest missions also. And the Earth observation satellite is envisaged to observe the ocean color data, sea surface temperature, wind vector data to use in the oceanography, climate, and meteorological applications. So it can also be used to identify the potential fishing zones, and there are other uses also. So the other nanosatellites that were launched, we can just have a look at their names. So was INS-2B, which was obviously built in collaboration with Bhutan, India and Bhutan collaboration. Then we had Anand, then Thibault, which was from Dhruv Space. Then we have Astrocast. So these were the other nanosatellites, and the scientists, they used two orbit change thrusters for the very first time in the rocket to change the orbit. So two orbit change thrusters. Then talking about the culture and the heritage, Telangana, it scores a double win, so it has been given two awards at the UNESCO Heritage Awards. So the first one was for the restoration of the 17th century step wells inside the Qutub Shahi Tombs complex in Hyderabad. And second was for the conservation work on the Domkonda Fort, which was built in the 18th century in the Kamareddy district. So you can find out more about these two places. Then, as I previously told you, that Bhuttiatoya tribes, they are located in the state of Telangana. So the incidence is that they had murdered a forest range officer, and originally their home state is Chhattisgarh. So they migrated from the state of Chhattisgarh in year 2005 because they faced prosecution by Salvajudam, which is a state-sponsored militia, and also by the Maoist groups in Chhattisgarh. So they migrated to the state of Telangana. So yesterday was the anniversary of 26/11 terrorist attack that happened in 2008 in Mumbai. So we now see that the non-traditional threats to the country's security is increase in cyber war and cyber espionage. So these are the new threats that are emerging. So we need to equally focus upon them also, apart from focusing on the traditional threats, which remains. Okay, so this I can say that this is one of the most important topics from today's newspaper, which is talking about what has been the women's contribution, what has been their role in drafting our constitution. So before that, we see that constitution provides a good map for good governance structure, how it should be, what should be its components and features. Then it is most crucial feature, which has the doctrine of separation of powers between the three organs, that is executive, legislature, and judiciary. Then Prime Minister says that our constitution is open, futuristic, and visionary as it is a living document. Now, coming to the women's role, there were 15 members in the Constituent Assembly who were women, and one of them, that is Dakshayani Vilayudhan, who belonged to a marginalized community. She made important interventions to protect the rights of the oppressed classes. Then other women that were a part of the Constituent Assembly were Durgabai Deshmukh, Hansa Mehta, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, and the other women members. They too made contributions for the welfare of women. So these are important people. So you must be aware about this another dimension also, which is obviously very less talked about but rightly highlighted. Now we see that, okay, now states, they are trying to hire private firms to ensure that their GDP, that they are able to meet their GDP target levels. So the state of Uttarakhand has come forward and it has hired McKinsey, which is a global management consultancy firm, to help it achieving the target of doubling its the GSDP in the next 5 years. So how this private consultancy firm can help them is they can take steps in obviously varied dimensions. So the first one can be that company, it will select the sectors where progress is needed. And so the first step becomes identification of the sectors, the potential sectors, which in which we can see growth. So second is they can bring renowned companies to invest in those identified areas. So first was the identification of the areas. The second becomes attraction of investment in those particular identified potential areas. Thirdly is they will invest in increasing the yield of the crops. So the third one is about agriculture sector. So increasing the yield, the productivity of the crops and improving their quality. So fourthly, they will also work upon providing the export market for the products. So these are the different areas, the different dimensions in which the private firms can help ensure the states to doubling their GSDP in a targeted framework. Then talking about the India's fertilizer sector, okay, so we saw that the fertilizer prices increased because of the Russia-Ukraine war. But as of now, we have enough fertilizer stock to meet the Rabi requirement of the current Rabi season. So we are not dependent on any one particular country for our fertilizer supplies. And when we talk about the needs of the entire country, as far as the fertilizer sector is concerned, so we need 650 lakh tons every year. So that is our demand, our requirement for the fertilizers. And because of the supply crunch and rise in prices due to the Ukraine war, the obviously this thing came into the picture. And Russia, our trade with Russia has gone up, and it has gone up not just marginally, but it has gone up many times. So Russia is one of the importers, one of the markets through which we are importing our fertilizer. Another one is Belarus. So now looking at the four types of fertilizers and our requirements, which one accounts for the highest one, and do we have sufficient supplies or not, we'll be seeing to that. So first one is urea, and our demand is 180 lakh tons annually. So not annually, I'm sorry, for the this particular Rabi season. So urea accounts for 180 lakh tons. Then we have DAP, that is the diammonium phosphate. So 55 lakh tons is the demand. And we are also importing the diammonium phosphate. Then we have NPK, which is the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium fertilizer. Its demand stands at 57 lakh tons. And then we have murate of phosphate. So it is the least demanded, which stands at 14 lakh tons. So when we look at the figures of all the four fertilizers, we come to the conclusion that urea is the highest demanded. Then we have NPK. After that, we have DAP, and then we have MOP. So that's how you can have a rough idea about which fertilizer has the maximum demand. And coming to the question that will the global situation increase the fertilizer subsidy or not? So, given the current global situation, the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, we see that fertilizer subsidy it could go up to rupees 2.5 lakh crores. And given if the global situation remains the same, we have the concerns right now. So the fertilizer subsidy bill can definitely go up in the coming year. Then, talking about a new era in the Indo-Bhutan ties with the launch of one of the nano satellites under the private launched rocket as of now, as we just saw in the beginning. So this is giving a new dimension, a new era, a new beginning to the Indo-Bhutan ties. And the Bhutanese nanosatellite that was launched was named INS-2B, and it was developed by the scientists of both the countries, India and Bhutan. And so we expect to provide Bhutan with high-resolution images for the land mapping and managing its natural resources, agriculture, and forest. So this can be one of the components in your answers when you're talking about Indo-Bhutan ties and what are the new steps that we are taking to further strengthen our cooperation and obviously our trade and different policies that we are undertaking. We are introducing new dimensions and new areas of cooperation. Now, next topic is the Himalayan yak. It gets food animal tag. So the tag has been provided by FSSAI, that is the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. So the categorization that is expected to help check the decline in the population of Himalayan yak, and it plays a multi-dimensional role when we are talking about the livelihoods of the people living in the hilly regions. So it has a socio-cultural and economic role for the pastoral nomadic population. And according to the census, when we look at the population decline in the Himalayan yak, comparing it to the census that was conducted in 2012 and now in 2019, we see a 25% decline in the population of yaks to 58,000. So the decline has been attributed to the reasons like there was less remuneration from the board, and there was discouragement of the younger generation from continuing this nomadic yak rearing. So these are the two factors which led to the decline in the population. So economically, as of now, before giving the tag of food animal to Himalayan yak, it was not generating so much of income for the population who were rearing them. So, but with this new development, we believe that it will lead to commercialization of the yak milk and the meat products, which is going to lead to entrepreneurship development in this particular area. So, new, we can say, employment opportunities will come up, and obviously, younger generation now would get attracted to this thing. and it is going to open up several vistas for the economic benefits for both the farmers and the food processors also. So food processing, attraction of the younger generation, and making it more economically viable with this tag, with the new development, is going to help the people supplement their income, especially agricultural is a seasonal sector. So now they can, focus on rearing yak also. Talking about the global development, we see that China recently conducted the Indian Ocean Forum. So China is trying everything possible to dominate even the Indian Ocean, given it is trying to dominate the South China Sea. And also yesterday we talked about it is also moving towards the Arctic region. So we see that India was not invited. However, our neighboring countries, 19 countries participated. So you can just have a look that all these countries participated, and it talked about the blue economy, creation of a blue economy think tank, and China Africa satellite also. So China is also moving towards Africa, where it is like launched a satellite remote sensing application center. So it is basically trying to create its dominance even in the Indian Ocean region, and India not being invited. What else is it pointing towards? Then we see that US is it has banned the equipments from China's Huawei and ZTE on the concerns of unacceptable risk to national security. So these kinds of news, they keep coming up. Talking about development about black corals near Australia. So black corals were discovered, and they've been discovered below the surface in the Great Barrier Reef and the Coral Sea off the coast of Australia. So you can open your atlases and have a look at where is the Coral Sea located, what is the Great Barrier Reef. So black corals, they can be found growing both in the shallow waters and the down to depths of over 26,000 feet. Now, unlike the colorful and the shallow water cousins, the deep water, the corals that have been found in the deep waters, they rely on sun and photosynthesis for their energy, for generating energy, and the black corals, they are also filter feeders. So a question has already been asked in UPSC about filter feeders. Then they eat tiny zooplankton that are abundant in the deep waters. Then talking about measles, so firstly, you must be aware that measles is a viral disease, and we saw an outbreak in Mumbai due to low vaccination coverage. So we see that lower immunization coverage due to disruption in the vaccination services, and also there's a term which is the vaccine hesitancy. So that has been responsible, especially parents are vaccine hesitant in providing their children with the vaccination. So that is the reason why we saw such an outbreak, and we also witnessed the numbers going up in the states of Bihar, Gujarat, Haryana, Jharkhand, and Kerala. So we need to ensure that the children they are getting universally vaccinated for measles. Then you can find out more about the contributions of the James Webb Telescope so far. And right now, the recent development is that it has given us a glimpse of the early universe. So for PT, it becomes important. Then, okay, so FAQ is talking about three topics that we have had already discussed. This one is talking about the new framework regarding the online reviews. This one is about the India's new policy on prevention of suicides. And third one is talking about the tea industry of Darjeeling. So we have already discussed them previously. So I have highlighted the important portions that we'll be just having a look at right now. So first we'll take up the new draft of the online reviews policy that the government has come up with. So it has been named the Online Consumer Reviews Principles and Requirements for their collection, moderation, and publication. So this is the name of the new policy, the new framework, and talking about how these guidelines they will deal with the fake reviewers. So it states that User authentication is going to be a part of it, which will be done either through your email, telephone, call, SMS, or single sign in or the CAPTCHA system. So, user authentication is a part of it. Then it also acknowledges the terms and conditions of the website. So, you need to accept those terms and conditions before providing your review for a product or a service. And also providing an email or telephone number also becomes mandatory so that you are able to provide your review. And the website also has to ensure, it has to make certain that all the systems, they have anti-fraud mechanisms in place to protect the personal data from internal and external fraud. So these are the components of the framework. It is basically telling you how we are going to tackle the fake reviews and the fake star ratings. So the reviews, how the reviews, they will be moderated. So it would be done by ascertaining through the authors, basically the people who will be writing the reviews, they are called the review authors. And the activities such as will be, so there'll be monitoring of the frequency of writing your reviews, then the history of your contributions, the customer's contribution, and the location, and also use of your language. So you cannot use any foul language or post any illicit content while providing your review. And reviews, they must also mention the date of publishing so that a potential customer can have a look at some of the recent reviews about a particular product and service. Now, secondly, we'll take up the new policy, India's first policy on prevention of suicides. So it was published by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and this is in line with the WHO's guidelines for suicide prevention in the Southeast Asian region. And talking about the target, this can definitely come in PT. So the target is, it aims at reducing the suicide mortality by 10% by 2030. And talking about why do we need a suicide prevention policy. So firstly, we'll have a look at the global data, the global scenario as far as suicide is concerned. So according to WHO, the data from 2018, it says that globally there are close to 8 lakh people who die because of suicide every year. And in India, there are 1 lakh deaths happening because of suicides annually, and nearly one third of all the suicides, they happen amongst the young people, the youth. So this is the global data. Then suicide is also the second leading cause of death among the people aged 15 to 29 years old. So second highest reason for death. And when we talk about women, so also it is one of the leading causes of death when we talk about women in the age group of 15 to 19. And as in talking about India, so in case of India, the suicide, it has become the number one cause of death. Number one cause of death among the people aged 15 to 29 years. So in youth, we see suicide is one of the reasons behind their deaths, which is the highest, accounts for highest number of deaths in youth. So India's contribution to the global suicide, it has increased from 25% in 1990, and in 2016 it has increased to 36.6% when we talk about women. And when we talk about men, even in their case, the rate has increased from 18% to 24%. So when we look at the data for women, we see that the rate has increased much higher when we compare it to the increase in the case of men. So for both men and women, the rate of suicide has increased over a period from 1990 to 2016. And in the past 3 years also, the suicide rate has increased from 10 to 11.3% per 1 lakh population. And the strategy, it incorporates a special focus on preventing suicides during the disease outbreaks also. So you need to remember the features of the policy. They can come as statements in PT. And obviously you can get a question about suicide also in mains. So this becomes the first component, that it includes the tackling of the cases of suicides during the disease outbreaks, and COVID-19 is one of the best examples of this period. And the most common reasons for suicide includes looking at the reasons why people are subsiding. So the most common reason is the family problems, followed by the illnesses. Then other common reasons are the marital conflicts, your love affairs, bankruptcy and indebtedness, and substance use and dependence. So narcotics and drugs is also one of the reasons. Looking ahead, you must be aware about the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences. So this policy is talking about bringing all the relevant institutions, the ministries and departments together and work in a comprehensive manner with targeted approach in dealing with the suicides cases and bringing them down. So it has offered commitments to establish effective surveillance mechanisms. Secondly, establish psychiatric OPDs through the district mental health plan in all the districts. Then to integrate the mental well-being curriculum in all the educational institutes within next 8 years, and also talking about reduction of the stigma that is attached to, when you try to discuss about your suicidal tendencies. So there's a stigma right now, so you are, you just keep everything within yourself and you have the fear of discussing it with your, even your parents or your closer ones. So these are the things which the policy is focusing upon, and it is going to work on. And we also need to leverage the media in order to spread awareness, destigmatize mental health, promote responsible media reporting of the suicide cases, and strengthening data collection is also a key part of this strategy, so that we have a data driven approach and we can see the trend of how the cases are increasing or falling and what has been the change of the reasons behind such cases. Coming to the condition of the farmers of the tea industry in Darjeeling, we see firstly, we should know that Darjeeling tea is also called the champagne of teas, and it was the first Indian product to get the GI tag in 2004. So Darjeeling tea has the GI tag, and we have a thread from the Nepal's tea gardens. So we have seen that there is an unhampered and easy influx of the substandard tea from Nepal, which is obviously a threat for the Indian tea industry. And no doubt, when you compare it to the qualities of both the teas, so Nepal's tea is highly inferior in quality when we are comparing it with the Darjeeling tea. But what is happening is that we are importing cheaper tea from Nepal, and then it is again being resold and exported by naming it as a premium Darjeeling tea. So that is hampering the interest of the farmers of the Indian tea industry. And Nepal, it also shares similar climatic conditions and terrains, and it produces tea at a lower price because of less input cost. There's particularly when we talk about labor, so labor is cheap and fewer quality checks are present there. So the cost of production of tea in Nepal is very low. So that's how things are happening in the Indian tea industry. And also, the production was hampered in Darjeeling because of an agitation which led to the shutting down of the tea gardens because of demand for a separate state of Gorkhaland. So people have not revived out of the impacts because of these protests. And also, when we talk about the climate change, that also has an impact on the tea industry. So we are seeing reduction in the production, and at the same time the cost of production has increased. So a double whammy for the tea farmers, the tea producers. So climate change is leading to declining yields and high absenteeism among the workers. So also there is no land left for the expansion of the tea gardens. So tea bushes also, they have become older. So when we think about uprooting and then planting a new one, so it is obviously a time and cost intensive activity. So for PT, you should know what is Tea Board of India, its composition, and other details about it. And when we talk about the global factors responsible behind the economic decline, so that is decline in demand from the European markets in the wake of the Russia-Ukraine war. So that is the global reason. The tea exports are also falling. Now, talking about the way forward, what steps, what is the solution ahead now, given the current situation, given the economic decline that we are witnessing? So, we need to take steps like stringent requirement for the certificate of origin on the tea imports from Nepal. Then, the small tea growers, they should be recognized as the GI registered producers at par with the other tea producers who have obviously large tea gardens, and the small tea growers, they have a share of 52% in the tea industry. So 52% of the tea is being grown by the small producers. And when we talk about the per capita consumption of tea in India, so that is also very low when we compare it with other countries. So it stands at 850 grams. And so it is saying that we need to increase our tea consumption also, so that even the domestic demand increases given our exports are not rising. However, consuming too much of tea is obviously not good for our health. So there are different varieties, different species of tea. So we can just have a research and see to that if you are a tea consumer. Moving ahead, talking about the rare earth elements. So it is focusing on our reliance on China on importing the rare earth metals. So India, it is right now producing only 1% of the global output when we talk about the rare earth metals, and however, we have a share of 6% in the world's reserves, but we are only extracting only 1% of that. So we need to diversify our sources of these rare earth materials because they are strategic in nature instead of just relying on one country, that is China. And when we look at the data, so according to the 2018-19 figures, we see that 92% of our rare earth imports by value and 97% by quantity by volume, they were from China only. So much of reliance on China is obviously it can be risky for us in future given how the geopolitical situation can change. So we need to come up with a dedicated mission on lines with the semiconductor mission, so we can make it a component of the India's deep ocean mission plan and also part of Make in India campaign. Then talking about where are these rare earth elements used? So they can be used in the nuclear program, they can be used in making permanent magnets, and one of the rare earth elements is thorium. So you must be clear with the definition of rare earth elements. So they are basically the elements. So most of the people get confused that since the name is rare, so they might be occurring in lesser quantity. However, that is not what is meant by rare earth elements. It basically means that they are difficult to extract given the technology that we have right now. So it is very costly to extract the rare earth elements, and China is a master in that. So that's why we have so much of reliance in over China. So we can move ahead and the steps. So it is telling us, the article is telling us that we need to have a dedicated mission and make it a part of Make in India and other missions that can, have synergy with the extracting the rare earth elements. So that is it from the Hindu newspaper. Now let's just move on to the Financial Express. We just have one article important there. So okay, so from Financial Express, we are just going to have a look. However, we have discussed this topic a lot. So, like, it is showing you the picture of the Vikram S rocket, and India has two launch vehicles, that is GSLV and PSLV. When we look at the data from 1999 to December 2021, we saw that India had launched 342 foreign satellites for 34 countries. So this was the India's first privately developed rocket, Vikram S, which has been launched successfully. And you can go through the details talking about India's share in the global space sector. India right now it accounts for 2% of the share, and we are aiming to increase it further. over the next coming years, and right now its value stands at $7 billion. So we aim to increase it up till $50 billion over the next 5 to 6 years. And also in 2017, the government came up with the draft Space Activities Bill 2017. So government is also taking measures in providing funding to the startups which are working in building the private rockets in space technology. So that is it for today. It is Sunday, so that's why we have less piece of news articles, but we have taken up all the important ones for us. And thank you for joining Ansarkari. Meet you tomorrow, and also do not forget to subscribe to our channel and share this video as much as possible. Thank you.